We'll do the Mamer Shuvah Yisrael, which the Rebbe said that Shabbos Parshas Haazinu and Shabbos Shuvah in the year Tovshin Lamed Vav. Now, in the original Mamer, the Kuntris, there is no information over there outside that it says it was published on Shnas Chamesh Salofim. Shvam Meis Chamishim V'Sholish Libri, that's in Tovshin Nun Gimel. So this must have been something that the Rebbe was Magia earlier, and they published it in Tafshin Nun Gimel. There is no introduction here. It doesn't say that it went out for any special date. Apparently, they only published it at that time, and there's no Pesach Dover. There's just the Maimer. They must have found, or they must have had a Mugadik Maimer, which they put in here, and that also it says Hanocha here. So I'm not exactly sure. We got to find out from the Yedei Dover, those who know these things, exactly the Hishtalshlus Hadvorim, but we'll do the Maimer inside. B'siyate Dishmaya, Shabbos Parshas Haazinu, Shabbos Shuvah, Hey Tovshin Lamed Vav. Hanocha. Shuvah Yisrael ad Havaya Likecha. Ki choshalto b'aveinecha, k'chu yimochem dvorim gomer imru elov kol tisa oven gomer v'neshama forim svasein. We're going to touch this whole pasuk. The pasuk basically is what we read on Shabbos Shuvah, that Yisrael should return. The question the Rebbe is going to ask, why Yisrael, not Yaakov, which would seem the more appropriate, because it says, Ki chashalto b'aveinecha, you stumbled, and that's more shaykhs to Yaakov than to Yisrael. And also the idea of Kichu Yimachem Dvarim, that we need to take with us along these words when we turn to Hashem, Imru Elov Kol Tisa Oven, say to Hashem, you carry all sin. We'll make up, instead of the korbanos that we should bring for the sins, we make it up with our lips, through our davening, b'mokem korbanos tiknum, as the Rebbe will explain. So the note that our Rebbes, our leaders, point out, Mashakoshu Shuvah Yisrael, why does it say Shuvah Yisrael? The L'chaire would seem, since we're talking here about Shuvah, he should have said Shuvah Yaakov. It's more fitting to use the name Yaakov when we're talking about Shuvah. Below Shuvah Yisrael, and not Shuvah Yisrael, Shuhu Shema Maila, because Yisrael is the name that represents the greatness of the Shema Maila, the Yisrael. That's the Loshin, because there comes Kisoriso Imelakim Vimanoshim Batuchal. The reason that they gave the name Yisrael was, as the pasuk says, when Yaakov battled against Esau and then against the Malach. So the Malach says, "The Yaakov Kisorisim Elikim Vanoshim." You battled with Malachim, with Elikim, and with Anoshim, and with the people, with Esav and Lavan Batuchal, and you were successful. So, meaning that Yisrael is represent a level of sarisa, of being in charge and stronger. So, why would Yisrael be the one that needs this name? Why should we call the Yidden by the name Yisrael when we're talking about that they have stumbled in sin? וגם הטעם על ישראל הוא גם הטעם הקריא שם ישראל הוא כיסוריסו. So first of all, the language Yisrael itself carries the meaning of Sarisa, that you were the one that prevailed. But the reason is because he did prevail. So there's a very strong Yisrael, to name Yisrael very strongly, the idea of being uh, on top, of being on an advantage, on a high madrega. So why do we say and contrast that with Yaakov? Mashenki Yaakov and Loshin Akev. Yaakov comes from the Loshin of Akev. So first of all, the word itself, Yaakov, has the word Akev, which means heel. And then you look, why was he called Yaakov? V'gam hatam al kriyas Shem Yaakov. Huli f'sheyodei gomer ba'akev is because he called him Yaakov because his hands was holding on in the heels of Esav. So his name says it. And the story why he got the name was because he was holding on to the heel and behind the lowest level of which is Akev, and not Stam Akev. Loirak Akev, Stam El Akev Esav, Akev Esav, who's holding on the heels of Esav. That's the very lowest of Madregas, because Esav's heel is within Esav itself at the lowest Madregas. And that's why he called him Yaakov. Bimkein Havale Mamer Shuvah Yaakov. So therefore, he should have said Shuvah Yaakov. V'lo Mamer Shuvah Yisrael. So why does he say Shuvah Yisrael? Frat. Al Pi Amud, Rebbe adds to the question based upon what is said. V'lo yiro goimer b'Yisrael, v'lo yiro, Pasuk says there Amal b'Yisrael, which means Hashem doesn't see any negative by Yisrael. That's what in the Nevuah of Bilam, when he wanted to curse them, it was turned around. He blessed them and he says, Le'ro Amal b'Yisrael. He very specifically said, Yisrael le'ra'ama, which means Masha'enkim b'Yaakov, that in Yaakov there could be Amal. So since we're talking about Chashalta b'Avinecha, that should be more Yaakov than Yisrael. And even more, it's not understood. Masha mamshich because of Ki Chashalta b'Avinecha, it says you have stumbled Avinecha. Now, there's different sins a person can stumble. Avinecha is the most intentional sin. Mele, if he used the word Shuvah Yisrael, the name Yisrael, when he was talking about accidental sins or something which are not so severe, wouldn't be such a big problem, not as strong. But now we're talking about Yisrael and we're talking about the most severe sin. We're talking about Avinecha. The oven who inyan hasdonis. Oven is the idea of those intentional sins. Barafilu b'negeya lishgogis. Now, intentional is a much serious, even accidental. Accidental is not really excused. That's pretty bad. That's very bad too, as the Alter Rebbe says. In the Arizal Harafilu b'negei even as it pertains to accidents. So we find in the holy letters of the Kutev Arizal, Sheshgogis who mitzad his gabrus nefesh habahamis, that shgogis come because of the strengthening of the nefesh habahamis. There's no such a thing as just making a mistake, and then you are free, exempt. Otherwise, you wouldn't need Shuvah. You need Shuvah, as Rashi says, you need Shuvah for Shgogos too. It means that even Shgogos accidents comes because of the overpowering of the Nefesh HaBahamis. This is the reason why Rashi writes in Masechta Shuvah, that also somebody who does a mistake would still need atonement. Why would it need atonement? He was a mistake. The answer is because mistakes come because there's his gabrus nefesh habahamis. L'tzadik lo yune kol over. Tzadik doesn't have mistakes. A mistake happens also because of his gabrus nefesh habahamis. And that's why Rashi says that a shoygeg requires shuvah. So so we see harafilu inyan hashgogos einoi shayich bibchinas Yisrael. So even shgogos do not fit when we talk about Yisrael. So even if the pasuk would have said ki chashalta b'shoygeg, also we'd have a problem. But how much more so, Mekloshkin, for sure not to say you stumbled sinned is dinus. So the question is, V'lama Omer Shuvah Yisrael v'lo Shuvah Yaakov. So why does the pasuk say Shuvah Yisrael, not Shuvah Yaakov? Gam tzarich lahavin. Also, we need to understand Mashe Kosuf Kechu Imachem Devarim. Take along words with you. In other words, speak to Hashem. The L'cheire Kishomer Shuvah Yisrael. When we say return Yisrael, it's full tshuva. Tshuva includes vidui. Say the words, confession. So when you say Shuvah Yisrael, Hare Akavone Hilit Shuvah Kidaboi. So the intention is Shuvah Yisrael, proper tshuva. Umekiv on Shem Mitzvahs Es, Shem Mitzvahs Lizvadus. Kishayisu Shuvah, there is a positive mitzvah to confess when you do tshuva. Hare do Shuvah Yisrael Kolel Gam Inyan Havidu. So Shuvah Yisrael would include also the idea of confession. So already when you're doing tshuva, you confess. Now, tshuva is mainly in your heart, but it's still a mitzvah to say. Goes along with that is vidui. That's Shuvah Yisrael. Dagam sheikera tshuva who believe, even though main tshuva is in the heart. Gam havidui who mikore tshuva. Also vidui is from the main aspect of tshuva. Imkein. So what does it add? Take along words with you. You ready? Tshuva includes already vidui. Also, what the apostle says, Imru Elov Kotisov, say to Hashem, you carry sin, but he did Shuvah, so there's no more sin. Since he's already done Shuvah, Shuvah Yisrael, so for sure he has been forgiven for his sins. And why does he have to say and ask again? Oh, the one who carries sin, there's no more sin there. He did Shuvah already. So, all the pasuk from the beginning, the name Shuvah Yisrael, and why Yisrael, not Yaakov? It says, we're talking about the serious sins. Why does the pasuk have to specifically say Kol Tisa Oven when there's already confession that comes along normally with Shuvah? And why does it say Kol Tisa Oven, which would mean that he still has Oven? He's already doing Shuvah. Also, we need to understand what it says afterwards. That we will make up with bulls with our lips instead of the karbanas. He talks over here, he counts over here, elevated step. He says, Shuvah Yisrael. So first, return it, and then take words. So you take along words and you say to him, Kol Tisaven, and then you come to the sound from sin. That after you have all these steps, all the matters that preceded, Barak, all what we can do is we can make up for the bottom with our lips. We don't have karbonis itself. We only have. So it's sort of a letdown, talking about the different shuvah and chuimach and varim. And then what do we finish off? We don't have, but Svaseinu take place of the bulls. The idea is, the Rebbe explains here, the Niklolus Inyan Hatshuva who Inyan Diluk. Generally, tshuva is the idea of diluk, it's a jump over. Commotion is by Lil Basichas, as explained earlier in Daf Habrengit, in the Sichas, that the jump, when you give a jump, you did tshuva, is l'maylam is seder v'hadarga v'hishtalshlus. Seder v'hadroga v'hishtalshlus. It's beyond an ordinary and a step and a valve in evolution. The zehu, that is why Masha Teshuvah he b'shaita chodo b'rigo chodo. Teshuvah is in one moment, one while in one moment. There is no order. There's no step by step. It's a leap. It's a leap. It's a jump over. The yonim shebahad darga tzarich lezeh zman. When you have matters that are in a step by step, gradual, takes time. The more that you have greater matters, it takes more time. To reach and to accomplish the greater elevated matters takes more time. As we say, for example, a person will not stand on his teacher's mind, understand him, until 40 years. It takes 40 years. When we talk about such a great level of Daita Derabe, it takes 40 years. Because the great elevated matter of the Rav's mind, tzarich l'zezman mufluk, you need to do this a very great time, 40 years. So those are things that take time, and the greater it is, it takes time. But Teshuvah is a leap, a jump over. Inyan HaTeshuvah. But the matter of Teshuvah, even though it's a very elevated matter, that's just in one while, in one instant. It's a change around to the highest level. And the reason is, because the service of Teshuvah is with more force. In a way of a jump over, not in a step you jump over. That you're leaping, you're jumping over from the opposite. Sometimes you can jump within the same area and you just give a jump. But here it's a jump from the opposite. That he jumps over from the opposite, behind him. That means that it's not incomparable, the place you come and the place you jump within the levels of Kedusha, which are higher than ordinary way. You give a jump is that would be also a big jump. But that would be in Kedusha. But in this case, Teshuvah Ki'im Shemadalig Minyan Hafchit. That is when you're jumping over from an opposite. You were on the other side, and you're doing Teshuvah. The Zehu Gam B'Teshuvah Stam. This thing, the idea that you're jumping from the other side, is regular, ordinary Teshuvah. The B'Shchila Hoya B'Tzad HaHepach. In the beginning, it was on the other side. The B'Riga Chod and Asa the Baal Teshuvah, and in one instant, you become Baal Teshuvah. So, any Teshuvah that you do means that you were on the other side, and instantly you become a Baal Teshuvah. That's a jump. But especially when we talk about Teshuvah that comes from the level of great love. And over there we have that the sins themselves become like merits. That's a jump from the extreme lowest level to the extreme highest level. Why is the extreme? The lowest level, because in the beginning, you didn't just have Avedis. Kim's we say Zdoinis Nas like Izochias. So the Zdoinis, which are intentional sin, Kitseyachi Tachten, that's the extreme lowest corner to do intentionally mitzvahs bezot. By the Teshuvah Nasik Izochias. And through Teshuvah, they become like merits. And when they become like merits, they are on a higher level than merits itself. Shezchuyas elu. Nasim is doing is these merits that are come from the intentional. Heimnailim yoiser gam is zechuyas hatzadikim. They are on a greater level even than the merits of tzadikim. Ktzachi elyon, the highest, the extreme highest level. So the Rebbe explains that the level of Shuvah is the level of diluk, a jump over. And the Rebbe explains how Shuvah comes from the other side and comes from Zdoinus, and it becomes, especially when it becomes Zochis, every Shuvah, but especially Shuvah Ma'abarabba. So this is the idea of Shuvah, which is the idea of diluk, and this will serve as an explanation for the idea the Rebbe presented over here.